On today's show, the Hawks are now 2-0 in Las Vegas. We'll have a full breakdown of Sunday's game and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2021 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening here in Las Vegas. It's the middle of July, and the Hawks are playing Summer League basketball. We'll get into that, of course, on today's show. And I should also say at the top of the show, we are brought to you today by FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets. Your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Please like this video there as you're watching it, and tell your friends about the podcast as well. And the Hawks opened their second game of the season pretty well here in Summer League after a win on Friday. By the way, if you missed anything from the first game of Summer League, I did a full breakdown that dropped on Friday evening into Saturday. This is the follow-up to that, a 98-80 victory for the Hawks against the Suns on Sunday afternoon. If you heard the show on Friday, you will note that I did a lot of non-Summer League stuff on that podcast, as there was some pressing news to get into, a new contract for Nikola Durisic, as well as Jacob Toppin coming back on a two-way. Today, no such news. There really isn't anything brand new. We'll have some details that I'll probably hit on later on in the week about some other stuff that's kind of been piling up the last few days, contract details, salary cap stuff, etc. But nothing pressing, so we'll kind of just deep dive into the game on Sunday. And I would say big picture, and of course, if you're new to the podcast, what we do, generally speaking, after games, kind of go big picture early on and kind of dive into the game later on, and also have some player-by-player takeaways from the contest. But it was a nice performance from the Hawks on the whole. You know, this is much more about individuals than the collective for the most part in Summer League. You're trying to learn about what's going on. But the Hawks kind of played Hawks basketball for the most part in this game, took a lot of threes, some nice passing. They, I would say, play with a lot of resilience, generally speaking. Something that Brian Bailey, the Hawks Summer League head coach, talks about post-game, is the Hawks kind of, they had a big lead that we'll talk about later on. They kind of gave a lot of it back, and then they were able to kind of bounce back from there and kind of got the ship righted when they kind of had to in this game. So plenty to get to on the show, but certainly a lot of positives. Asa Newell was quite good in this game as the number one pick for the Hawks. Jacob Toppin was good in this game. Nikola Durisic was good in this game. So lots of positives. And we'll get into all of that stuff later on in more depth. Big picture at the top of the game, I will say that Eli Njai, who actually had a really good game on Friday, I thought, the Hawks two-way forward that they signed a couple of weeks ago post-draft, missed today's game with the Hawks saying it was a left wrist injury. I kind of broke that news actually before the game started because I saw him out of uniform like an hour before tip-off. And I was like, oh, he's probably not playing today. And he was wearing kind of a brace of some kind on that left wrist. I was told he didn't practice on Saturday either, so must have been an injury that happened in the game on Friday when he actually played quite well again in that game. But no news on like how long he might be out. Anytime you see a brace or a wrap like that, it could be the rest of the Summer League. We just don't know right now. I won't speculate because I just don't know. But that was a bummer to some degree because he was actually really good on Friday and a guy the Hawks are already invested in with a two-way contract. Other than that, Lamont Butler with an ankle injury, Davon Smith with an ankle injury, and then Josh Christopher, who arrived late to Hawks Summer League, remained out in this game. Same as Friday if those guys missed those three games. So they were four guys down in this one. Also, just to get this out of the way at the top of the show, there was a big Hawks contingent again courtside in this game, headlined by one Trae Young. I thought it was kind of funny how big of a deal that some fans were making that Trae was not at the game on Friday, despite being in Vegas. Not a big deal at all, honestly, but he was at the game today, sat courtside, as did newly signed guard Nickeil Alexander-Walker, plus Jalen Johnson, whose brother's on the team, of course, beat Krejci, Mo Gay, Keaton Wallace is still unsigned, but was around the team today as well. So lots of luminaries. Ansi was there, Quinn was there, Kyle Korver was there, Bryson Graham, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, as for the game, Jake Stevens actually got the start at center in this game after not playing at all on Friday. Stevens, if you missed the breakdown of the Summer League preview that I did with Glenn Willis, Stevens is basically a shooter at center. Like, he's a big body, 6'10", 6'11", 270, I think listed as, but certainly his number one skill is the perimeter spacing, and that was the case here. He didn't play like starter minutes in this game, but he started and played some center, opened up the floor a little bit. In fact, He immediately got 2 threes up in the first 2 minutes. He really is an awesome shooter for a center. Like, even, not a huge prospect, but someone who really can shoot it for that size. And that kind of allows Asa Newell to be more of the like primary pick and roll threat from the 4 position, etc. And Stevens is a pretty good passer. So that was a kind of notable at the top. Juricic had an off the dribble 3 for the first bucket of the game for the Hawks. He was pretty good. Only took 1 3 in the entire game on Friday. Today, much more aggressive. Took only 1 3 in this one as well, and that was the first shot of the game. But a couple of like foot on the line 2s that were probably should have been 3s in some respects. Played well. First sub actually was Dwight Murray Jr. for Juricic, and they had Bufkin play a lot off the ball, I think, seemingly intentionally. He was more of the point guard on Friday and a little bit more off the ball in this game, which I'm not surprised by. They want to kind of, people kind of tend to forget this, and actually want to set a second on this now. People kind of tend to forget, like, Summer League is not really about the results. It's really about, like, from the team perspective, they want guys to do things that they're going to do in the future. It's more of a learning exercise. And with Bufkin, he's never been a pure only point guard. He can play point guard, but they want to have him, ideally, when they drafted him even 2 years ago, like, be on the ball and off the ball. And I think they probably intentionally want him to play with another point guard a lot in this game. He was not very good in this game, but we'll get into that later on. Defensively, it was pretty ugly at the beginning for Atlanta. In fact, like the first, 5 minutes or so, and then it got a lot better for the vast majority of the game. But the Suns had 12 points in like 3 minutes. It was pretty rough, like communication-wise. I think playing Stevens a little bit more hurt the defense at times in this game. On the positive side, I thought Juricic was way, way better and more engaged defensively than he was on Friday, where I talked about how bad he was. Honestly, he was really bad defensively in that game on Friday. Today, he was mostly fine, which is a good sign. Like, I think Friday was kind of a game that you might run off a little bit. He was coming off of signing a big contract, all those things, but he was pretty bad defensively in that game. He was much more normal in a positive way in this one. Elsewhere off the bench, besides Dwight Murray Jr., you had Jack White play a little bit for the Hawks in this one, the Australian forward shooter type. Also, Noah Jr. Joseph was the backup big after started in the game on Friday. He played well defensively in this one, I thought. And then Kobe Johnson, who was actually much better today as well than I thought he was on Friday, much more under control on offense, and also had some good defensive activity with 2 steals, etc. As for the actual like game flow beyond the opening minutes, I thought Toppin was really good the entire way. He had a sequence early on where he actually scored 5 straight points and then drew a charge defensively. Bufkin had a slow start for sure that never really materialized. He missed his first 6 shots. I think at least 2 or 3 of the shots that he missed in the first half were like right at the rim that just didn't go in. That's not like a good or bad thing, just kind of notable thing there. A couple nice passes still. He actually led the team in assists by a comfortable margin. He had 9 assists in this game. So a good passing night overall, but the shooting was not there for him. The Hawks, though, broke the game open a little bit at the end of the first quarter with a 13-0 run to go up by, I think, 13 at that point in time. They made 5 threes in the first quarter. They, of course, promptly came into the second quarter and went 1 of 9 from the floor with 4 turnovers in the second quarter. Part of that was the bench was a little bit rough. I thought Adam Flagler had his worst half to date in the first half of this one for the Hawks. He was better in the second half, I thought. But he wasn't alone. The rest of the bench minutes were kind of up and down, I would say, to be kind to the bench minutes. But the Hawks were still up by a comfortable margin really the entire game, waxing away in a little bit. But there were a couple of nice catch-and-shoot threes from Asa Newell, including 2 in the first half. He also had a really good block that I wanted to point out where he squared up against a guard, used his length really well on a verticality play without fouling and blocked the shot. That's a veteran-type play from a young guy, which was nice to see from Asa defensively at the end of the first half. And they're actually up by 12 points at halftime. All 10 guys who appeared in the game for Atlanta scored before halftime, and then, of course, in the game. Toppin had 11 points in the first half, but they won the possession battle, even with some turnover issues in the second quarter. They played pretty well in that second period. One more note here, and we'll look ahead to the rest of the game, and then also the individual player stuff. Javen Johnson is now the only guy who has been active and healthy for both games who has not played. Usually there's a couple guys that don't play much in Summer League, but questions that I was getting before Summer League started, I don't know if he was going to be the one, but he has been the only guy so far that's, again, both active and not playing at all. Today, Jack McVay did not play. I think basically he and Jack White, who are both Australian older shooter types, kind of used the same role, and it was McVay on Friday and White today. But there you go on the actual player front in that first half. All right, in a second, we'll get into some second half takeaways plus some overall thoughts, and then at the end of the podcast, my player-by-player breakdowns after a word from our partners. Today's show is brought to you by Hungryroot. Let's be honest, meal planning and grocery shopping can be overwhelming sometimes. Between busy schedules, being a picky eater perhaps, and trying to eat healthy, it can be a lot for you. And that is why I love Hungryroot. They take all of the stress out of planning by filling your cart for you with personalized groceries and meal options based on what you like and what you need. Hungryroot uses their smart cart technology to recommend groceries, recipes, and even supplements tailored to your personal preferences. Whether you are dairy-free, gluten-free, gut health focused, or just trying to focus on eating better, Hungryroot has you covered across the board. What I love most is when you actually don't have to shop forever at the grocery store or stress about what I'm going to have for dinner that night, perhaps. It makes it really easy and simple with Hungryroot. They figured everything out for me, and it saves me so much time, which is massive. Take advantage of this exclusive offer as well from Hungryroot. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/lockedonnba and use code LockedOnNBA. That is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. The code is LockedOnNBA. Get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. All right, so the Hawks were up by 12 points at halftime, and it was the Jets were turned on after that. They went by 22. Midway through the third quarter, I would say, Asa Newell had a good stretch with 7 points in like a 2-minute period. He was flying around, was really good in this game. I'll talk about that more later on. They gave some of those gains back with a 13-3 run by Phoenix. There was some sloppiness turnover-wise in that stretch. One of the things that I observed throughout was not a huge surprise. When the Hawks were taking care of the ball in this game, they were winning. And when they weren't, they had less favorable results. That's usually the case, but it was definitely the case here. I thought it was actually a nice sequence from Noah Jr. Joseph, a nice backdoor pass to set up a Kobe Johnson dunk, a nice help side block from him as well. The issue with Joseph is that he's not a great offensive player, like polish-wise, but defensively, physicality-wise, like he's definitely an NBA-level athlete. There was a funny moment in the third quarter with Juricic getting a technical foul for like waving off an official, kind of a weird call there. But he had some high-level passes and was really engaged, I thought, in this one. They kind of flailed later on in the third quarter, but had this awesome possession at the very end when Bufkin broke the paint, penetrated, set up a swing pass to Jack White for a big three to kind of stem the tide a little bit for the offense. Notably, through 3.5 quarters, Asa Newell had made more threes, 3 of them, than he had actually attempted 2-point shots. That changed at the end, but he was definitely more of a floor spacer in this game than he had been previously. He actually had a nice finish, actually, that he caught off a handoff going to his left side, kind of down the paint. That was a nice little drive from him on a kind of a DHO action. But after they almost blew the entire 20-point lead, they got it slowly stretched out. They had a really good fourth quarter, mostly defensively. The Suns were like 3 of 15 from the field over about a 7-minute period. And the Hawks got to the line 9 times. They stopped turning the ball over as much again. And then Bufkin, similarly to Friday, had a really good closing kick, a couple nice shots on drives to go down there run. He couldn't make shots the entire game, but I think he was like 2 of his last 3 in the fourth quarter to kind of put the game away when they were kind of pulling away. And they also played smaller with Newell at the 5, which was, again, similar to what happened on Friday when they closed the game out in very impressive fashion. It was with Newell at the 5, playing smaller, playing kind of like hyper defense, and that was pretty impressive. This time it was actually with Juricic on the floor instead of Flagler, but Juricic was just bought in more and defending at a much higher level in this game than he was previously, which allowed them to play that way, a little bit more size on the perimeter and kind of go smaller in the front court. So overall, it was a solid performance from the Hawks. I will say now the Suns were playing without, I think, 3 of their top 4 players in Summer League. Ryan Dunn, the returning defensive ace, Rasheer Fleming, their top 31 pick, I think, and then Kama Malawach, their lottery pick, all did not play in this game. So they were really only down to like 2 of their real prospects, Kobe Brea and Osei Guidaro, who were both pretty decent in this game. But the Hawks had the more talented roster, for example, and they played like it for the most part in this one. Also, like by the numbers, the Hawks were 13 of 30 from 3, which is very big in this game. They took 6 more threes and made 5 more threes than the Suns. Like I said before, the turnovers were like not the best in this one. They had 16 plus some extra team ones. So I think they were 18 or 19 as a team, but passed the ball well for the most part, 22 assists in the game, 9 by Bufkin. They got to the line more than Phoenix did. They got more possessions overall than Phoenix did. They won the glass in this game, and they got 10 shots blocked, which is not what you want to see, and had 13 live ball turnovers, but everything else was pretty buttoned up. They were the better shooting team. They were just a better team overall, and a lot of that was the big names that we'll talk about in a second when it comes to like who played well and who didn't, but it was a pretty positive performance. One quick note on a non-Summer League level before we get to the actual takeaways from the players in this game. I got a lot of questions in the last 2 days, as to be expected, about the roster and lack of movement on the roster. And yes, they have 2 open roster spots right now. I'll cover that a little bit more on Friday. And again, I broke down the Juricic contract and the Toppin contract on Friday. But if you look right across the league, the last like 4, 5, 6 days, basically nothing is happening. There have been some guys who have re-signed with their own teams, but basically player movement wise, it has been deader than dead across the league the last 4 or 5 days. So it's a little bit more understandable. The Hawks are kind of being patient here. And look, the Hawks do have the biannual to offer someone if they wanted to, but the most likely scenario is that they will probably just offer minimums now for tax purposes, all that stuff. So if there's not really anything happening, yes, there are guys that I'd love the Hawks to sign. Amir Coffey is probably the number one example of that right now. Another forward, another option at the 3, et cetera, et cetera. Backup point guard, perhaps. Backup center, perhaps. Like there's options there, but it'll pick up at some point. I get that it's like there's this flurry of activity, and the Hawks were very active around the draft, and it's been kind of quiet since then. But that's kind of where they are. Like basically, the offseason is not over. But unless you are one of the big name restricted guys like Josh Giddey or Kuminga or Quentin Grimes, everything else is kind of done. Like, I know Chris Paul's still out there, Al Horford's still out there. Those are like old guys in certain circumstances. Like most of the activity of the guys who are like guys are kind of done. And it's from now, it's like, all right, minimums, see how Summer League goes. The Hawks could certainly offer a Summer League guy a contract, probably a 2-way if they were to do that. They got Keaton Wallace hanging out there, who's been, again, around the team the last few days, even though he's not under contract. He could be back on a deal of some kind, whether it's a 2-way or a full deal. We'll see. But there is activity to be done. There will be at least 2 more moves. 2-way, they have to fill the 2-way spot, and then at least one of the 2, if not both, roster spots that are open. So stay tuned. But to answer the question, no, there's been nothing new, and there hasn't really even been like buzz behind the scenes. Like nothing I can report, no like rumor stuff. It's just kind of like we're in the holding pattern now as to who they're going to sign for those spots. All right, more to come in a second about how I feel about some takeaways from the players in this game. I would say headlined by Asa Newell and Jacob Toppin after a word from our partners. This show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-tech soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling for you? You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the athletes are fresh all the time with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. They have offerings across the sports betting space at FanDuel that includes point spreads and totals, money lines, game props, future bets, player props, live betting, and same-game parlays all in one place. And they have every single sport and league you can possibly think of at FanDuel. That, of course, includes the NBA, which we discuss all the time on this podcast, plus the NFL, MLB, college sports, NHL, UFC, golf, tennis. They have soccer, domestic and international, boxing, and everything in between. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and even make regular season games feel like must-watch events at FanDuel. Whether you're placing a single parlay right now or just watching a bet in baseball right into the 9th inning, at FanDuel, they make it feel like you're part of the action all the time. And if you're new to FanDuel, if you're a new customer, bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. Open the FanDuel app right now today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, and I won't go through the entire roster in a Summer League game. I'm not going to do that, generally speaking, but I'll headline the guys that are certainly worth talking about more. I would say the headliner for me is Asa Newell in this game. 18 points to lead the Hawks in scoring, 11 rebounds to lead the Hawks in rebounding. He was quite good. Now, he won't be 3 of 4 on 2s and 4 of 5 on 3s every game. That's efficiency that you love to see for sure. But he was really good, really active. He was plus 18 in the game. He made 4 threes. That is more threes than he has made in a game since maybe ever, but especially since high school at least. He never made 4 threes in a college game. Only played 1 year in college, but still, his career high at UGA in threes was 3. So he made 4 in this game. And for me, it's more about the way he shot them. It was not like he's going to make them always all the time, but he was shooting them with no hesitation and shooting them with confidence. And the stroke looks good. I asked Brian Bailey about that. Bailey talked about like the stroke just looks good. Like it's not a fake thing. So I said after the draft, like Newell's going to have to be able to shoot. It's a swing skill for him, in my opinion. Like he can be an NBA player without shooting, but as far as like reaching like starter level outcomes, he's going to have to shoot it. And it looks good right now. Like you want to overreact to a small sample size, but it looks like the mechanics are there. The results are there. Defensively, he's looking good. I will note, he was good on the glass in this game. He's got to get stronger. I talked about that on Friday. It's not going to go away. Every time I watch him, it's like, it's so painfully evident to me and basically everyone that I talk to. Like, he has to add strength, but that's going to happen for a guy who doesn't even turn 20 until October. So no worries there. I thought it was a really encouraging day at the office for Asa Newell, and positive all the way across the board. The other guy who was really good in this game was Jacob Toppin. Toppin, for me, was their best player overall. And I think you probably could say he's been their best player overall over the 2 games. Like, just steady as they go. Not exactly a big name. Wasn't a first-round pick. I get that. But 15 points, 8 rebounds. He's a guy that's already signed to a contract. He's on a 2-way. He isn't going to be super flashy, but he's a really good athlete. Can play both forward spots, hit 2 threes. He's a professional defender. Like, he's a good athlete, good size. Like, I liked the way he's been playing. He's definitely overqualified for Summer League. Like, he doesn't need to be playing, honestly, at this point. Like, you're not going to learn too much more about him, I don't think. But he makes everybody else's life easier. And obviously the Hawks are invested in him already. So I thought Toppin was really good today. He was good on Friday. I'm encouraged by what I've seen from him. And the third, like, real bright spot was Juricic. Juricic had 16 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds on only 7 shots from the floor. He was 4 of 6 on 2s, 1 of 1 from 3, 5 of 5 at the line. He was much, much better today than he was on Friday. I did mention in passing on the show on Friday that, like, maybe he had some nerves or some weirdness coming off of the finally getting a contract. It was literally the same day. Like, I kind of gave him a small pass on that, even though his defense was terrible in that game, and it really was. He was much more engaged in this game defensively, much better. Now, he's still a guy that I don't think is going to be a good NBA defender, if I had to ask or guess right now. But he was definitely solid enough today. Like, that was fine. He was active. He was much more aggressive defensively. He was much more under control offensively. Again, not like overshooting, not taking bad shots. He was efficient. Got to a couple mid-rangers that were good looks at the rim. He was a game best plus 29 in this game. Like, I thought he was really, really good. It was encouraging. If you were like, I've gotten some really funny feedback on social media or on YouTube about Juricic in both directions before today. Like, some people think he's like Luka Doncic, which is funny to me, but also some people are like, should be out of the league. Like, I got literally that wide of a spectrum in the last 48 hours of reactions. This was obviously a much better performance. I thought Friday was like kind of worrying a little bit, but even with the context, and look, again, I'll say this a lot the rest of the week, and I already have. It's Summer League. You don't want to overreact. It's important to note that on both sides, on the high side, on the low side. Friday, it was rough. Today, it was really good. The truth's in the middle, I'm sure, but I was encouraged by his performance today for sure. Other stuff in this game. Kobe Bufkin was just not as good for sure as he was on Friday. I thought Friday was the best player on the court. I said as much. Today, not as much. Now, he had a terrible shooting game. He was 3 of 17 from the field. That's obviously quite bad. Now, I could name a lot of guys that have done similar in Summer League already this week who are even bigger names than Bufkin. The best example probably is Cooper Flagg going 5 of 21 in his first game. That does not mean you're terrible at basketball. It just doesn't mean that. With that said, he had a bad finishing game around the rim. He had a bad shooting game from the perimeter. He was 0 of 5 from 3. But I thought the floor game stuff was pretty solid, actually. Bad shooting night versus bad play night are different. I don't think he played great. I don't think he played as bad as the shooting numbers indicate. He had 9 assists and 1 turnover in the game. That's pretty solid. Now, again, not hand waving it. He was not good in this game. I'm sure he'd be the first person to say that. He didn't talk after the game, but I'm sure he'd be the first to say that. He was not very good, but he was really good on Friday. Again, like I said with Juricic, the other direction, Bufkin was really good on Friday, bad today, and the truth is in the middle somewhere, probably. Same with Juricic. So there you go. That was the roughest. He was the roughest as far as like guys who were the core guys. I thought Kobe Johnson was better. Just want to say that out loud. 2 assists, 4 rebounds. Sorry, 2 steals, 4 rebounds. Was better in this game. I mentioned before, Stevens did a decent job. I thought offensively, defensively, it is kind of rough, and that's kind of what. If you're wondering why he's not a prospect, it's a 6'11" guy who can shoot it the way he does. It's the defense. Flagler had a rough first half. Was better in the second half for sure. 6 points and 2 assists for him off the bench. Dwight Murray Jr. was fine. Jack White hit a couple of threes. Junior Joseph, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, was good defensively. Offensively, it's a work in progress. And there you go. So it's kind of a rundown, but I think generally it was a pretty positive day for every one of the key guys other than Bufkin. And I think even Bufkin was probably better than the like really, really bad stuff that I was seeing about his play. And I get it. You shoot like that, you're going to have the reaction people had about his game. But I thought he was like not a total disaster, despite the fact that he could not make a shot in this one. All right. From here, the Hawks have another standalone game early on Monday. So this podcast is going to go up in the evening Sunday night. The Hawks play again the first game of the day, again on Monday, 1:30 p.m. local time. So a 4:30 p.m. Eastern time start against Houston on Monday for the Hawks. So stay tuned for that. I'll have another show after that game. Maybe with a special guest. We'll see. I have a plan in place, but I won't share that now. But stay tuned. I'll have a show either way. Subscribed to Locked On Hawks podcast, anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. I am on the ground in Vegas for at least one more game, and then I'll be back at home doing the same thing that we always do on the show, covering everything about the Hawks day and night, every week of the year in this form. So please stay tuned. Tell your friends about the show. Please follow the show also on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and follow my non-podcast work about the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, enjoy your Sunday evening into Monday, and we'll see you in about 24 hours.